All right, are we live? Give this a minute to warm up. Let me get in here and make sure I can see everything. Oh, goodness. There we go. All right. Looks like we're live for another lunchtime chat, folks. Oh, we got some serious business to discuss today. Oh, man. I briefly hit that one article this morning in the news about Trump and the financial situation, and now he's gone full retard. And I've already provided my analysis in the title, but we can get into it a little bit. For those asking, once again, it's a turkey sandwich. We get anybody in here yet? Copy. Hey, Boneyard, what's up? How you doing? Hopefully I can keep this phone cooled down. Yesterday, it ended on me. It was in the sun and it was hot anyway and whatnot, so I got it shaded. You're going to have some wind noise because it's a little breezy, but hopefully we don't have the same result as yesterday. Hopefully we can continue this on for the duration. In spite of the heat, it's a little cooler today, about 95 because of the smoke. The smoke is thick today from the fires. As you can see, the background here is mostly white. Hey, it's all good in the hood here, you know how it is. Just trying to avoid the problems these fools keep putting on us, right? But I provided the link to this article that I was going to bring up here that you can follow along if you wanted to, but it's a CNBC link. Dick Bove says Trump is poised to take control of the Federal Reserve. Oh, so many comments for this. And I Googled it, and there's about 2 pages of stories for the last 20 hours or so about Trump and the Federal Reserve, because Trump's all upset that the Fed's going to ruin his economy because they're raising rates. Is he that ignorant, or is he in on it? There's one of two options, right? In my opinion, for that deal. And this story here really caught my eye when Dick Bove says Trump's poised to take control. Remember when we were trying to get Ron Paul elected and everybody said the Fed's independent, the Fed can't be controlled, yada yada, because that's the way it's written in legislation as far as I know. In this article, they're saying the Treasury Secretary sits over the Fed and controls the Fed. No, the only thing the Treasury Secretary does is buys bonds to give to the Fed. That's the way I see it, and that's the way I understand the process. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but the Fed is an independent private bank, and that's the way it's set up, and that's the way it's been established for years, a century even, to create money out of thin air and backstop the government by giving them all the cash they want without any consequence, essentially. But now they're saying that Trump can take control of the Fed, that the president can through his Treasury Secretary, to hold these bond rates down. And what is that going to do? We've talked about this for months. Holding the bond rates down does what? Creates inflation. We're going to have more inflation. Holding the bond rates down makes easy money, easy lending practices. These banks can go crazy. And if Trump thinks that's a good economy, he's going to be badly mistaken anyway. But we've been talking about the chickens coming home to roost for many years, about how this is all going to play out. Is Trump providing cover for the Federal Reserve in this respect by making these statements? So let me read a little bit more of this article. So the article starts off with Trump has multiple reasons as to why he should take control of the Federal Reserve. Well, he should disband it. If he can take control, can't he just disband it? And it says here he will soon do so because he can and because his broader policies argue he should do so. Wow. I don't remember anybody ever saying Ron Paul could take control of the Fed if he became president. There was the audit issue. We want to end the Fed for sure. But there was all the pushback. Congress has to write the legislation. Congress has to ultimately do the deed. But now they're arguing that the president can take control of the policies of the Fed. Goes on here. The Fed is a leader in pushing stringent regulation over the nation. By raising interest rates and stopping the growth in the money supply, it stands in the way of further growth in the American economy, i.e. inflation. Bad inflation, too. Says first off, he can. The Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve is required to have 7 members. It has 3. So he can appoint governors. That's true. There are spots to appoint 4 different governors. So he can do that. That doesn't mean he has control, because they always appoint some banker. If you put Ron Paul on the Federal Reserve Board, I guess I might have hope. But I don't see that happening, for one. So it says here he's been nominated. 2 have been nominated and are awaiting confirmation. After these 2 are put on the board, the president will nominate 2 more and then follow. In essence, it's possible 6 of the 7 board members will be put in place by Trump. But that doesn't mean anything. It's still an independent body organization full of bankers. It always has been. So go back no less than a year ago. This conflicts so much stuff. So the Federal Open Market Committee has 12 members of the Board of Governors. 5 are Federal Reserve District President, or 5 are Federal Reserve District Bank presidents, other than the Fed of the New York Fed, who was nominated by the president. The other 4 can only take their positions as district bank presidents if the board in Washington agrees to their hiring. Yada, yada. One of the examples they give here is the Fed bank president out of Minneapolis is already arguing for no further rate increases. Whereas for the last 3 years, there were all these snippets of all the Federal Board of Governors arguing for more federal rate increases. So that's a simple change in some of the positions, I guess. But what can you do? So that's one of his moves, is he can put different members on the board. So that's a modicum of control. That's getting people that are like-minded, I guess. Second is regulation. Talks about Dodd-Frank and the banking industry power the Fed has over the power the Fed has over the banking industry. The set of rules, just how they're over-oppressive, etc. The Volcker rule, crippling effect on banking, lending to housing markets. How is the Volcker rule? I mean, we're at a housing bubble. If anybody doesn't realize it, the prices in housing is almost out of control. But here he says they have a crippling effect on bank lending and the housing markets. There's plenty of bank lending from the housing markets going on right now. So he says with his appointees to the Fed, this will help ease up the regulations on the banking industry, which is possible. So here's where we're going to get some contradictions. Third reason is they're killing economic growth. In the second quarter of 18, the growth is non-seasonally adjusted. The money supply has been 0. The money supply did not grow at all. That's talking about the M2, which is physical money. Right? M2, not M1, M4. This is because the Fed is shrinking its balance sheet ultimately by $50 billion per month. That's the bonds they buy to keep everything afloat. They've been floating it, Operation Twist, all the QEs, all this stuff. They've been trying to downsize that balance sheet. That's why rates have been going up. They've been charging more to loan out money to make money back. And the Fed has raised interest rates 7 times since Q4 of 2015. There should be 5 more interest rates coming. This is the tightest monetary policy since Volcker headed the institution back in the mid-'80s. It will be recalled his policies led to back-to-back recessions. The recession's coming anyway. But is it, again, the title, is this providing cover? What Trump's doing and is making these assumptions and these statements, providing cover for the Fed to do this for the next recession? Is it providing cover for them? And they're going to blame it on one or the other. The Treasury is estimating it'll pay $415 billion in interest on federal debt. This is the insanity of these people's statements. There are a lot of bridges and tunnels and jobs that could be created with this money. Yeah, but it's owed in interest because you guys agreed in a devil's contract with a private bank. Bunch of fools. Well, there went my notes. Who we got in here? Hey, what's up, M. Long? Westwind Survival, what's going on? Aaron Cox, how you doing? They have lost control of the interest rates. The Dallas going up and they can't stop it. The dollar's going up. Is that what you're saying? When does that ever happen? The dollar and oil going up, right? But the bond rates are going up because people aren't buying the dollar today because of this. They're saying the dollar's getting crushed. 1 second, let me grab that before it blows away. Don't want to litter if we don't have to, right? All right. Thanks for checking in, everybody. But yeah, we're just talking about the Fed, and Trump seems to be going at odds of it, or are they really, is the question. The bottom line of this article, again, that's linked in the description box. The president can and will take control of the Fed. Wait, what? Why didn't we say that when Ron Paul was running for president? It was never said he could take control of the Fed, but he could put in policies to put things in check and get Congress to overturn the Federal Reserve Act. So again, here's where he reiterates. The law was written creating the Federal Reserve. The Secretary of Treasury was designated as the head of the Federal Reserve. Is that true? I've never heard that. If we want to take control of the Federal Reserve, just have Trump put Ron Paul as a Treasury Secretary, this problem will be over with. But he's complaining here that we're going to return to the era of the Treasury having the control and it's going to be politicized. So they're lamenting this era of supposedly the Fed has not been politicized the last 100 years, I guess, and that Trump is returning it to an era of whenever the Treasury Secretary was last in charge of the Fed. So I'm going to have to look up to some of that, but that contradicts a lot of stuff of how the Fed works and what's going on, which leads me to believe he's either ignorant or he's in on it. And Trump is not ignorant of finances and the way money works. I don't believe that. I can only assume he's in on it, and he's providing cover for the next recession because they're going to go at political odds on this issue for the next year or two or however long they string this out. And the banks can blame the administration and he can blame them for all the bad policy from the last 20 years or since '08 or whatever they want to do, and jab back and forth with what potentially could be coming. Which they've talked about the different asset bubbles, and now that we are in essentially what they call a sovereign debt crisis. All the sovereign nations are in these debt crises because of this similar policies throughout these countries. Did Saints check in? Saints always deletes his. Oh, there he is. Okay. Yep, Russia dumped bonds, right? They did indeed, but look at the bond price. It's still below 2.9, the 10-year. The yield curve flattening, it's another indicator of recession. All these indicators are out there, and all of a sudden this pops up that Trump's going to take control of the Federal Reserve in some way that's never been possible before with any other president. Didn't the banks pretty much tell Bush they were going to do a bailout, not the other way around? Remember the congressional testimony under the dark of night? Congressmen were threatened that if they didn't do this bailout, there would be martial law. Remember that? There was no talk of taking control of the Federal Reserve and the private banks, because they can't legally, at least the way the things are written. Now, physically, they definitely can. So I think that all this sudden news blast in the last 24 hours, if you search Trump Federal Reserve, you're going to get 20 hours of stories from this past day or so, and it seems like they're attempting to set up cover for the banks on this. That's my assessment of the situation, which is bad because we really haven't ever done that before. This is something new that very unusual, very, very unusual. That's why I put the little sirens on there, because this really stood out as something beyond what we've seen in the past with the banks and bonds and everything else. Interest rate changes. What we got going on? What's going on in comments? Right, West Wind, the housing prices are just out of control. Yeah, and the loans aren't so ridiculous. You still have to qualify a little bit. It's a little bit harder now, but they're lamenting in that article that Trump's concerned about that housing is too regulated, the loan process with the Volcker rule. Like we don't have a housing bubble in the process right now. Right, Boneyard? It's rotten to the core. There's no saving it. It has to be eliminated and destroyed. We can't expect it just goes. This is further evidence that you're not gonna save it. What's out here? Maybe we can ease the skids for all of us to prepare and be ready more so by people like Trump. Maybe providing a little bit of conflict, a little bit of cover for us, buying a little time, maybe. But ultimately, it's uncorrectable. Sovereign debt crisis, exactly. Hey, Aaron, what do you projection for California into 3? How could that be tied into what I'm talking about? I think California as a state is in further debt than any other state. But I don't know if it's necessarily tied to the Federal Reserve banking issues. California is its own animal. If the only thing I would say is I think that the initiative for split into 3 states, the initiative split into 7 states, I think that's all a distraction and trying to provide cover and avoid the state of Jefferson issue, which I think has a lot more traction and a lot more support. Because you look at it, like 15 of the 17 counties have passed resolutions or had votes on the state of Jefferson initiative. They're already way down the line compared to where these other issues are at, but they're getting all the press and all the play. And when they get all the press on the play and state of Jefferson's buried in the news, that tells me that they're distractions. They're meant to mitigate the damage the state of Jefferson could do to California, because that's more legitimate, I think. Tommy, they're going to rob us 9 ways of Sunday. They're going to try. That's for sure. They're definitely, that's the angle. Take away the pensions. Well, any way they can get any type of paper debt and redirect it to some other way and eliminate it, is that what they're going to do? Yeah. That's their angle. They gotta paper it over somehow. Oh, silver's crazy low, Saints. Silver's back down to like 1550, which is insane. Yeah, gold was pretty low too, right, Boneyard? I think it's above 1200 though. It's not down in 1100s, I don't think yet. Aaron, I don't see a convention Article 5 happening. There's not 34 states or whatever that can convene yet. That you might get a dozen. That's max. And I think those, whatever 12 states agree, I think they should go ahead and secede and write their papers of confederation some other way. If you could get that many states to do their thing. Okay, it's a 1248 Boneyard. Yeah, still above 1200, which is low compared to 1400, where it was getting close to. But it gold was also, you know, what it was down in the 1100s back, 4 or 5 years ago. So it's getting back down in that territory. But that's unusual. That's crazy when you consider all the inflation from the last 10 years of all this debt. Gold is crazy low, along with silver, copper, every other real asset, which I guess in some ways housing and real property should have an inflationary effect. So housing should be high, but it's crazy right now the way it's shot up in the last 2 years. Hey, what's up, J Mac? When you get on that hike, you gotta go camping tonight, right? Have a good time. I will look forward to you and Broseph putting out some videos. Oh, you think it could be a reverse Article 5, Aaron? You think they would do a Article 5 to revoke the Constitution or to revoke the first 10 amendments, something like that, to take away rights or be able to infringe upon rights, basically? Take away the checks on government? That would be insane, wouldn't it? That would be, yeah, then it's time to throw down. If they do something like that, that would be definitely the red line. That would be beyond red line time. That would be all sirens across the title of the chat if that went down. If I even did a chat. I'd be streaming from the front lines. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, Boneyard. I don't know that they can get that accomplished. They're just going to impoverish people to the point where they can't resist. And that's going to take time. There's a lot more time and things have to happen between here and there before they can bring in the blue helmets and whatnot. The Americans have to be really subdued and really convinced it's for their best interest and security. And there's a lot of things that have to happen. There's big events that can happen that we don't foresee or that they stage, but that's neither here nor there, I guess, until it happens. Scrap copper is up. Is that right, M. Long? Because copper on the markets is at a low for the past 12 months. But on your physical market, it might be different, You're talking about the paper markets with the way they trade on the commodities market and stuff. Which doesn't match reality. And brass is up too, huh? Can you actually see the scenery? I thought it looked mostly smoky. It's kind of hard. I guess you can see a little bit of a silhouette back there, but it's really smoky today with all the Yosemite fire going. We're getting a lot of that. But yeah, folks, I wanted to check in. Wanted to share that before the weekend got in and focus on that issue, because I feel that if Trump is going to the Fed like this with that angle, that they shouldn't raise rates because it's going to hurt his economy, his quote, not mine. He's in on it because he knows what that's going to happen. He has to know that without raising bond rates, you're going to get drastically increased inflation. If interest rates aren't able to adjust appropriately, inflation is going to go crazy. If obviously the Fed tightens too much, you're going to have a restriction on the economy. You're going to slow growth. That's true. It's a catch-22, and they can't control it. The economy and the markets are going to get out of control at some point. It's just a matter of how it happens. And by Trump having this conflict with the Fed, it seems like a providing cover sideshow or stage show, so that when it actually does happen, they can point the finger at each other, and everybody's confused about who to blame. And in the process of trying to get the blame, we get screwed, just like '08 when they bailed out the banks with all that mess. Something similar could happen. Just watch more enslavement would be what to be concerned about. Hey, Tony, what's up? Why aren't you sleeping? Is it your weekend yet, or are you going to work tonight? Copper's booming. Can't make RPGs or anti-armor mines without it. I didn't know we made RPGs out of copper. Do we make all anti-tank rounds and stuff like that out of copper? I had no idea. Oh, copper's part of the shape charge that causes the... Okay. The things you know. I got lots of pennies. I can shape pennies. That's no problem. Just making enough comp B would be the problem. Right, the cone shape. Got it, Saints. That's just to make it most efficient. You can make it out of other things. I mean, you can improvise a cone. I won't say how to use ammo cans, but you can do it. You can figure it out. You guys are smart. I trust you. So something to pay attention to, folks, if you want to. But it was a lot of people are going to look at this as Trump is fighting back at the banks, like he's going to protect the economy, protect American workers or something. It doesn't. I'm not going to fall for that BS. That's the biggest thing I'm going to say. I'm not falling for that. You know what I'm saying? It's a distraction of some sort. And more to follow. It's like him going at it with the bank for just no other reason than something is coming, and to provide cover at a later date. So that's what I'm worried about. That's what I see it as. You guys will have to evaluate for your own purposes. HR 5404. What is that, Liberty? Welcome to the chat. You'd have to have HR 5404. Can we get a synopsis or a brief title of that bill? We're talking about Congress, right? What are you laughing at, Saints? Is this anything economically or just some other bill? Liberty? I guess you could say in some ways, everything has something to do with everything, so it's probably important. Right, Boneyard, the Great Deception could be brewing. It'll hit eventually. Head on a swivel. Hate to be too pessimistic, but it's hard not to be when you look at all that's going on, the totality of everything. HR 504 is about bringing back the gold standard. Is that right? Oh, wow. That would be shocking if that passed. Who put that in? That would be, I mean, we all know the potential for that's out there, but how that affects the economy is definitely a bigger concern. So once again, to find the dollar as a fixed rate of gold, I wonder how much it would require. I mean, if you look at the inflation rate, even if they just use real money in circulation, the actual dollars that are printed to base that off of, you're still looking at like fractions of tenths of an ounce to be a dollar, you know? Unless they really just wanted to totally restrict the economy and, you know, make it an ounce of gold is $1,000. There's just not enough dollars to go around to promote a vibrant economy on that. A guy out of West Virginia put it in. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. I don't know if this provide a distraction from that to avoid, because you know the Democrats don't want Trump to have any more control over the economy than he already does. And they don't want him to be able to take credit for anything. So there's that part of it. But if he takes control of the Fed and gets a gold standard, and the economy pretty much goes to a standstill almost, it'll give an easy way to people to point fingers and go, look, it doesn't work. This isn't the 1920s. We can't do things this way. Here's an electronic currency that we can use that will make things much better. You know, problem, reaction, solution type of deal. Just keeping the head on a swivel, thinking about things. Walter Davis has joined us. Good afternoon, not evening. Hope you're doing good. Aaron, it makes sense. All the mining kicking ranchers off their land. Well, trying to kick ranchers off their land. That's not been fully successful, but there's a lot of efforts. Before the volcanoes blow and cover all the land with lava. Yellowstone, you talking about Yellowstone in particular? Right, Midwest Prepper, what's going on? The Hegelian dialectic, right? That's what you got to be on the lookout for. That problem, reaction, solution. If we get a gold standard plus control the Fed and things fall apart, everybody's going to be like, oh, look, we can't do that. We need to do this because that doesn't work still 100 years later, even though we haven't tried to let it work. Hey, Vincer Otomori, welcome to the chat. I don't think I've ever seen you here before. Thanks for dropping in. Yeah, the Fed's talking about raising interest rates, and that's kind of the point of this stream is Trump has been floating out there of taking control of the Federal Reserve some way or another, which is totally contradictory to previous information. But he's complaining that the Fed's going to raise rates and destroy his economy that supposedly he's taking all this credit for. All right, on Walter. Well, maybe we can make you feel better. If the morning chat made you sick, I don't think this will help you any, though. Bobby, what's up? I got to get used to that new name. I caught it, though. If anybody didn't know, Bobby Solar Homestead, that's Yankee 4, our old-time friend. Make sure you go check his channel out if you're not sub, but he just changed his name. So if you see him pop across chats or in your subscription, it's not a new channel. He's been around for a long time. Yeah, I don't know if I'd like my Bitcoin anyway, Bobby, but you go for that. It's a speculative investment at best. That's the way I would look at it. Still. All right, folks, it's been good. I want to get that out there. Show you the article below in the description box. And definitely go just type in Trump Federal Reserve and you'll get a whole bunch of articles and stories from the last 24 hours that are just all about this conflict now of Trump being mad at the Federal Reserve, destroying his economy. He doesn't want them to raise rates, but we know that if rates don't raise, the inflation is going to get terrible. So just throwing that out there. Y'all have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow morning in the chat. If you guys drop by, live free.